That's a really good one. I would say most probably not do everything by yourself. So when I started, I wanted to take everything myself and control everything. One thing that I've learned is to trust your team and delegate as more as possible, because it's very easy for you to get sucked into the business where you're not delegating enough. My few tips that I'll give to people who are starting: understand who you're targeting before you start getting the property, then start dressing the property, and then start thinking about who's going to stay there.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hello Hosty podcast. Today I am joined by Moneesha of KVM Serviced Apartments Limited, based out of Peterborough. Good morning, Nisha. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing really well. How are you doing?
I'm excellent, thank you. Would you like to start by telling us how you initially got into serviced apartments or serviced accommodation?
Right. Yeah, sure. It is a very long story, so I hope you've got an hour. Well, in a brief kind of story, I used to be in a corporate job. I was working from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or 9 to 7 sometime. And I used to commute about 5 hours, sometimes 4 hours, but most of the time 5 hours from my door to my office door. Used to enjoy what I was doing. It was a really well paid job, had great responsibility, had a great team. But soon I realized that I traded too much of my time for money. I was having less time at home. I just had a daughter and I was not spending much time with my daughter. And that started becoming a pain for me. And the thing that I really enjoyed what I was doing suddenly was becoming a pain, because I couldn't spend more time with my daughter, which was the other thing that I wanted to spend time with. And that's where I started looking at what else I could do. I liked the idea of going into property. Then I thought, you know what, I don't necessarily have enough investment to start buying property. So I started looking at what other options are out there. So initially, I started with rent to service accommodation, because that was the easy way in getting into it, until we started buying properties, buying guest houses. So this is where I am now. And yeah, it took us quite a while. So I've been doing it for over 6 years now,
Mhm.
and I'm really enjoying what I'm doing.
Excellent. My ears pricked when you said guest houses, because I'm aware of a strategy to do with guest houses,
Mhm.
and I'd love to hear what you're up to with guest houses. What
So
what are you up to
yeah.
with those? Yeah.
So initially, when we took the guest house, it was so one of the things that we do, or I do every time, is to review every 3 to 6 months. I do a SWOT analysis of the area. So we kind of review what's happening in the area, what's changing, what kind of demands is changing in the area, what could we supply more, supply less. And the guest house came in at the time where we were starting to look at what was happening really in the area. And we've noticed that a lot of people are moving away from the one room in a house, because obviously that was originally the trend in the area here, to now accepting the one bedroom, the two bedrooms, and becoming bigger. But they were not necessarily going and using the 5, 6 bedrooms. So in my area, we were having maybe one or two property, which was 5 bed or 6 bed, nothing bigger than that. So I knew by the time that we took the guest house, as a property as a whole, it was not necessarily going to work in our area, because the demand wasn't there as such. So the guest house itself was kind of run as individual rooms. So we took the idea of, okay, let's start with as individual rooms. Now there's different strategy you could do. You could convert all the shared area. So for example, like your kitchen, your reception room, and turn them into rooms to maximize on your profit. Or the other way of doing it is to keep the existing room, use some of the shared area, but still keep some of the shared area. Now, in my area, what was working really well was the fact that people were moving away from the letting a room in a house to a service apartment, because the idea of having a kitchen was very important to them, to be able to cook or be able to save money, not eating takeaways every day and things like that. So what we did with this specific one that we took, the first one, is we actually kept the kitchen, changed all the communal area into rooms, but kept the kitchen as a shared area with a dining area. So that's what we started with. However, we changed very quickly during COVID because obviously, as you know, during COVID, shared area was becoming a bit of an issue. So we changed it as a property as a whole. And we slowly educated the company we were working with that they can actually have bigger property and be more cost effective, because they could put a lot of their staff in one house. So now we renting it out as a whole.
Okay, so you rent the guest house out as one whole property.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, and you purchased this guest house.
That's correct.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay. Did you go a conventional route with the purchase, or how did that work?
So with the purchase, we went with a lender. So we took a lender on board and we financed it through a lender, and we also had a bridging loan to start with.
Okay.
And then finally, we kind of moved it over to just a lender because it was cheaper to have it on the lender. Now, with this property, every time we've tried and refinance it, we've had it at the wrong time. Basically, at the end of the contract, it was either COVID and the bank withdrew their offer. So we had an offer already to refinance it through the bank as a commercial loan. So we wanted to go to commercial loan so we can get the best interest rather than going on a mortgage. And we had it all approved. And then COVID hit in. The bank thought, okay, hold on a sec, this is now risky. It was not risky before. So they retract the, and we've had a few to try and get it refinanced, but overall I think it's still a really good strategy because the income that you can earn from this compared to much way higher, so it makes sense to carry on doing it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Very interesting. So who are your guests? Are you dealing with? I guess my guess would be in Peterborough, it's corporate as opposed to the tourist. But you tell me.
Yeah, sure. So in Peterborough, it's mainly business travelers. And yes, you have the corporate travelers, you have the white collar and the blue collar. But to be honest with you, you have a lot more blue collar than you will have of the white collar. But it depends on your property. So I always say that each property have its own trust strategy. So obviously my 2 bedrooms are more for my white collar type of stay. So the strategy for it will be slightly different to my bigger one because obviously your corporate client are less likely to want to stay in a 6-bedroom house and sharing bathrooms. So it really depends, I think, on your area and what works. Now, that's one of the reasons why we like to carry out a 3-month, 6-month SWOT analysis of the area, because that always gives us an opportunity to be able to see what's changing in the area and how do we adapt, our product we have, but also our marketing. So yes, it is a business travel area because there's no leisure as such, but we've been able to create a bit of a leisure market by having the bigger property converted slightly into more of a bit of an experience place for them to stay at. So what we end up attracting with this is people who want to stay together as a group, so spend time together as a family, as a group, and want a property which is 6-bedroom or 7-bedroom. But if they go to like Cambridge, which is the next place where you would want to stay on holiday, it's most probably going to be 2 times, 3 times more expensive. So we end up getting the lower budget type of holiday stay because they're more willing to travel to Peterborough. Yes, there's not a lot to see, there's not a lot to do, but they get the fact that, you know, they're going to be there spending time with family in a house where they can all sleep together, have a good time. So yeah. So we end up having that part of the market as well.
I have a theory about this size of property. The reason being is because I travel with my family, extended family, you know, the whole gang of us. We go away and we rent a large property, you know, Christmas, Easter, it could be any time of year, really, whenever it works for all of us. And being a serviced accommodation person, they say the responsibility falls to me to find the property. So I know through personal research that your search can expand across the whole. Well, if you're in England, let's say, you can if you're in the London region, your search will expand across the whole of the south of England. And really what you're looking for at that point, if you're looking for a town city that's got a bit of a vibe, but the property is the main thing. So if you've got a really accommodating property, you can be attracting guests that would otherwise not be considering your location, but if the property's right, you get them.
Mm-hmm.
You get the family booking groups. I mean, that's happened in our personal case. I guess
Yeah.
during COVID, particularly more so because there was, restrictions on travel, etc.
Yeah.
So did you do any, you're in Peterborough. So what strikes me immediately with Peterborough and service accommodation is there's a big training facility there. Did you do any training yourself?
Yes, I did. I actually did quite a lot of training, but funny enough, I didn't start with Progressive Property. I started with a training provider in London.
Okay.
That's how I started. And eventually I found out about Progressive Property in Peterborough. And I have done quite a lot of training with them. So I personally believe that as an entrepreneur, as a business person, I have to always have a budget where I'm investing in myself for my
Absolutely.
self-development.
Absolutely.
And also trying to learn things that, maybe is not related to service accommodation, because yes, I've done quite well in service accommodation, but now we're looking at setting up or diversifying in things that is not related to property, completely non-related to property. And it's all about diversifying. I mean, I think the last 2 years with COVID, we've all learned the lesson of the importance of being able to diversify and have different source of income. So yeah, it's handy to have Progressive Property there because you can select any course and try and do it and learn from it. So yeah, it's great. I mean, the disadvantage of having Progressive here is you get so many property investors investing in Peterborough. Competition is really high. You have to really work on your marketing, and yes.
Well, plus you're competing with Rob Moore and Mark Homer, so you've got some competition with those guys. They're Peterborough based, but I also went to Progressive. I did some training with those guys. I thought it really quite good. I learned quite a lot. I've been in property for years, and I agree with you. You've got to constantly invest in yourself and your education, and constantly improving yourself. And I was interested to know, because you being in Peterborough, when I went to the Progressive Academy, I remember searching for a place to stay and thinking, why are there no service accommodations like there next to the building, whatever. But yeah, an interesting point. And I'm sure there's plenty of people walking out of those doors thinking, right, where can I find an apartment around here to start my business?
True.
Yeah.
And usually that's what happens. A lot of people travel to Peterborough and then they decide, why can't I have my own service accommodation here? I can stay here and travel here every day, every week if I needed to.
Yeah.
It's a good market to be, because Peterborough have a lot of expansion plan, so it does work for us. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. So it's still a good market. But I would say that anybody coming to Peterborough need to be able to understand that it is a very highly competitive market. And if you're coming into Peterborough, you need to understand how you're going to be operating to make it a success.
Right. So the heart and soul of this podcast is aimed at helping hosts up their game, improve their abilities. Now, you're also a coach, I understand.
Yes. That's right.
What tips, tricks, hacks, and advice would you give somebody starting out?
I always say this is something that I didn't get in my training when I started. And this is something that I always train everybody when they're starting, because I think that is something that is missing out there, is to have a clear vision, what you want to do, what you want to achieve, whether it's income-based, passive income, or future investment. Once you've identified that, I think most people that comes into service accommodation are looking for passive income. Once you've identified that, then you need to understand where you're going to be locating yourself to start with, because service accommodation in different area, as we've discussed earlier, have different type of client that you're targeting. That could be leisure client or business travelers. So it's important to understand that very quickly and make a decision on which way you're going, because your marketing is I wouldn't say completely different, but it is significantly different depending on who you're targeting. Now, I always say to somebody when they're starting is to understand, okay, you're going into that area, but you now need to understand what is the demand in the area. So starting with a small SWOT analysis to understand, okay, what can you actually do in that area? Because let's say you wanted to go into Birmingham, for example. Well, who's going to stay in Birmingham? You need to understand that before you start first looking for your property and then start your business, you're setting up your business, and then trying to understand who's going to stay there. So I say start first with finding who's going to be staying there, and then find the right property that's going to fit for them. So, for example, if you're trying to be in an area which is leisure, it's very important for you to be in a place where people can travel to the activities around them. It's a nice surrounding. People can walk around. There's things that they can visit. That's very important. Whereas if you're in an area like me, where there's business focus, those are not necessarily important, but what's important for them is it's an area where there's not a lot of traffic, so they all finish at the same time. You don't want them to be stuck in traffic for hours, so that would be a problem for them. They don't necessarily need a place where there's a lot of facilities, but they do need a place where they can sleep comfortably. So the house needs to be comfortable, and it doesn't need to be right in town where it might be a bit expensive, so it doesn't need to be in the most expensive area. So these are things that will make you more strategic in choosing the right property that's going to be fit for the right people staying. So my first advice would be very strategic in understanding who you're targeting, and then choose that property after you've decided that, because I think that will save you some money. I know a lot of people who would take property. So when I was coaching, I had one of my client coming in a mastermind and telling me, I've got this amazing property, but I don't understand why I can't get any clients. And I said to her, okay, so where are you based? I'm based in London. I'm not going to go into too many specific details. Somewhere in London. I said, okay, that's a really good area. Yes, that's a very expensive area. She has a very expensive apartment. She's designed it. She spent £1,000 designed it to a very high end level. She's got designer stuff in there. But the problem is she's not able to attract people from that level, because what she's created is a very niche product, and you need to know now how to attract the people who's going to stay there. And she doesn't know that because she's advertising them on Airbnb, on Booking.com, on Expedia. Now, yes, there's an element of this, but when you create a product which is such a high level, you need to start thinking about how do you then get that type of guest, because they're not always on Airbnb for that type of product. So that's why I think before you go and take a property and start spending money designing the property, is understanding what you need. Also, when you're designing your property, if you're designing it for leisure, it's very important for the property to appeal nice, but also have a very nice experience, be an experience feeling for people when they go into the property. So things like you're putting a pool table, you're designing it to look really nice, having sitting area around the property so people can sit down and have a coffee chat together. It's very important. Whereas if you're designing it for people staying, what you need to focus on is the bedroom is as comfortable as possible. You have your super expensive mattress, because obviously they're there just to sleep, so that's their number one priority.
You mean for corporates? You mean
corporates?
Yeah.
So you can see where your budget is going to change depending on who you're catering for. So that's why I think for anybody starting, you need to know what you're doing first, rather than having a big, nice house, but then you don't know who you're really targeting, because your budget should be focused on who you're targeting. If I'm doing a corporate property, most of my budget would be on making sure that they have a comfortable bed, they have a comfortable room, all these things that will make it comfortable for them to stay there, maybe a printer if they need it. So that's what my budget is going to focus on. Whereas if I'm doing a leisure property, my focus would be on them having experience when they're staying there. So things need to look nice. They need to have things that makes it look nice, but also feel nice. So you need to have, soft cushions and things like that. It's all about the feeling for the holiday. So that's my few tips that I'll give to people who are starting. Understand who you're targeting before you start getting the property, then start dressing the property, and then start thinking about who's going to stay there.
Excellent. Do you know what I heard in that? There's a crossover between the two types of guests that you're bringing. There's a commonality between both, and the commonality is the bed. Now, have you heard of this is from what I've gathered from what you're saying. So have you heard of the TV show? Have you seen the TV show Gordon Ramsay's Hotels from Hell?
Yes, I have actually.
Yeah, you have. Have you watched it?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, I binge watched it. When I discovered it, I binge watched every episode, every series. I was like all in. And the one thing that they do every time is they go in and they make the beds super luxe. You look at the bed and you're just like, I've just woken up, but I want to go back to sleep. They make you feel really.
That is very important. So with my cleaning team, the one thing that I say to them is, you can get everything wrong, you can't get the bed wrong. because when people walk in is all about, so one of the tips where everybody's starting is, as a human being, we all make mistakes. Your cleaner's going to make a mistake. They're going to forget things. Yes, you need to take time to train them to get them to where you want, but they're always going to make some little mistake because it's a very pressurized environment in terms of you have so many properties that they need to set up very quickly, but very efficiently. So yes, there's going to be mistake. But the one thing that I say to the cleaner is when somebody step in, if the first feeling is very nice, they almost forget the details. So for them, the first step as they come in, that area needs to look perfect. The next thing is the bedroom, because that's what they're there for. The bed needs to look perfect. If the beds look perfect, you might have missed other things. They're not going to see it. Because the first feeling when coming in was, oh, that's a really nice bed with, with all your little free gift on the bed. So yeah, that's very important.
I guess if something's not working, let's say, for example, well, the two other things are hot water and internet. If they drop off, at least the guests can say to themselves, we'll go to bed and deal with it in the morning.
True.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so looking back, what advice would you give your former self starting out?
That's a really good one. I would say most probably not do everything by yourself. So when I started, I wanted to take everything myself and control everything. One thing that I've learned is to trust your team and delegate as more as possible, because it's very easy for you to get sucked into the business where you're not delegating enough and you're taking all the responsibility of even checking things on yourself. So I think one advice I'll give to myself if I was to start again is start delegating from day one so you can scale up much quicker. But also enjoy what you're doing, because service accommodation can be quite stressful. Just enjoy it. And if you're enjoying it, you're going to be able to scale and grow much faster.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice. And if people would like to find out more about you, your coaching services and your business, how will they go about doing that?
They can just follow me on Facebook or Instagram. It's KVM Service Accommodation. So if you search under KVM Service Accommodation, you'll find us, or you can search under Moneesha Ludhor. You'll be able to find me. I can send you the detail for you. You can share it to your listener if you wanted to.
Excellent. Thank you, Moneesha. It's been lovely talking to you. You've given us loads of information and advice. I feel inspired to go out and do greater things. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for your time.